I'm just going to start recording our conversation, Mark. Are you comfortable with that?
We can do it. You probably got a sweet throat clear just to start it out. So
Isn't that how all good podcasts begin?
that's what you give the people what they want to hear.
How's life in Wisconsin?
It's good, man. Weather's good. Summer finally showed up. It was a bit of a bumpy start, pretty up and down, cold, a lot of cold. And then, but I think we've arrived now. We're actually, I'd say it's maybe cooler than average, but like very pleasant because of that. So I'll take it.
You may not know this, but I was actually in the Midwest this week, and I would agree on the pleasantries. I was there for a handful of days, and I got to tell you, it was pretty nice weather. There was not very much humidity, which is a rarity as you approach July 1st.
Yep.
It was darn right comfortable yesterday.
Where were you?
I flew into Minneapolis, and then we were in New Richmond, Wisconsin, picking up a new puppy.
Oh, excellent. What kind of dog did you get?
Got a new little yellow lab puppy.
That is exciting. Is this going to be a bird dog, house dog, all the things dog?
Yeah, all of the above, 100%. But they did come. He's got really great bird dog lines. So there's a kennel called Riverstone Kennels that's based in New Richmond, which is about like an hour from Minneapolis, St. Paul, just right over the old St. Croix River.
Yeah.
And they have very well-known bird dog lineage. So good everything, but certainly phenomenal like waterfowl capabilities. So yeah, I was spending a few days over there filming some stuff, doing a podcast with Josh, who's the owner, and his wife, Whitney. And then my wife and I flew our little guy home yesterday, which was terrifying.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you drove or flew. So, and then was the dog with you in the airplane then? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
How did it
I
go?
woke up with the worst anxiety I've ever had in my life. I don't know why. It's just like the thought of mad props for all you parents out there that travel with young children. I don't know if I could do it without a high level of alcohol consumption just to put me at ease, because the thought of taking a newborn child on an airplane, particularly a longer flight, really is like the worst thing I could ever think of. It looks miserable.
It can be tricky. I mean, and it's definitely it's a crapshoot with what you might get. I would say if you are a non-parent yet, or really I think if you are a parent, you just have like the highest level of empathy for like anybody in that position. Like when somebody does have like their baby's crying like the whole time, because I've been there before, and it's like, dude, you are doing everything in your power to comfort that child and, not cry and be disruptive to the entire plane. And sometimes it just doesn't work. So little empathy goes a long way.
Yeah. So I kind of felt like that going in, but I was pleasantly surprised. He flew like a trooper, never made a peep, poked his little head out of the carrying thing one time is all.
Unbelievable.
And was just blew me away. Yeah. And it was a big day for him. He got taken out of his litter. He left. He was on his own. He's, an hour to the airport, 2.5 hour flight. A lot of things happened, but we're not quite 24 hours into it. And so far I'm thrilled.
That's awesome, man. That's super cool. Yeah. That's
a good feeling.
Yeah. Sounds like a nice little, what have you named him yet?
No name yet.
TBD.
TBD. I like to spend a little time getting to know him, maybe one name you thought of all in your head, and then you meet him and you're like, I don't really see it anymore. So maybe you pivot to a different one. So we went into it. Right now we're just calling him Pup, and maybe within the next day or two, we'll materialize his name, but I'm not sure.
I like it. I think that's a good plan. And I then just pick one.
Pick one. Yeah, exactly. So we're joined today, ladies and gentlemen, of the Hushlife podcast by a very longtime friend of ours, Mr. Mark Boardman, who is currently, if you're watching on YouTube, at Vortex World Headquarters. And what I might add is an exceptionally nice headquarters.
Appreciate it. No, it's awesome to be here, man. Yeah, we need to get you guys out here again. It's been too long. It's been too long since we've just talked.
I know. The expo, more or less. But then prior to that, I think we came out to World Headquarters in the spring of 2018 or 19.
Something like that.
With the guys at the Hunting Public and Sam Solholt. And we filmed a Fall is Near. Fall is Here commercial.
Fall is Here. Yeah.
Fall is Here. It was near at the time, but it launched when it was here.
Both statements are correct. Yes.
And I got to tell you, we're going to talk a lot about the culture of Vortex today because I am such a fan of it. And you guys have just done such a great job on some of those things. But first, I want to just call out the Washington State Cougars hat in the backdrop as if you were at College game day waving the flag. It's a Cougar thing.
Are you guys recording on video too? Like it's like a mirror. I'm trying to move so people can see it. It's not working.
There's something about you Cougs. You just always got to be waving the crimson.
I slipped that there probably a couple of years ago and nobody said take it out. So I just, it's just a nice little, it's just a little reminder, for everybody out there.
It's a reminder. Speaking of reminders, Mark, we are approaching a pretty big milestone tomorrow, as a matter of fact, dating back to the year 2015. Any idea what that milestone might be?
If I was going to guess, some sort of either initial contact or initial partnership with the Hush team.
That's a good guess, Mark. I'm impressed. I was doing some due diligence, looking through my notes, looking through my archives. I do have archives because we've been doing this a while now. July 1st, 2015 was the first time we signed an agreement with Vortex Optics so many years ago to work with you guys. Can you believe it's been that long?
I mean, that's a long time. And I think, in an informal capacity, we were probably doing stuff even a couple of years before that.
What a segue you brought up. I'm going to read you an email and I want you to respond to this email. Casey sent it to me. It was dated May 2nd, 2013. Do the math, folks. That's a while ago. And this is early on in the days of when Hush formulated. But frankly, it wasn't formulated at all. It was just Casey's business. And I had been helping him try to sort out some marketing and business stuff. And we were trying to make a list of companies that we thought were great companies to maybe approach and think, hey, maybe we could get some binoculars to showcase in Hush and with Levere channel, maybe even a monocular.
Maybe even if you're lucky.
Casey writes to me, hey, man, take a look at this email from Mark from Vortex that I just sent him and tell me how I should reply. My opinion when he says, quote, we're pretty locked up, unquote, means I haven't shown him enough value in what I'm bringing to the table. The email from Mark Boardman. Casey, thanks for the email reaching out to us with the opportunity. What exactly are you proposing as far as key deliverables? I like that. That's a good catchphrase. Also, what are your expectations in regard of our commitment from the Vortex end? We're pretty locked up as far as marketing goes right now, but may be beneficial to have a conversation via phone to gain a clear understanding of what you have going on. Any chance you're going to be at the NRA show this week? If not, let's schedule a time to chat.
Seems reasonable.
Pretty reasonable, right? I thought you did good. No critique here. I'm just running down memory lane because I think it's meaningful. You're still with Vortex Optics and we're still here and we're still great friends. And that was in May of 2013.
So, yeah, that would have been, that definitely had to have been a very, very early, maybe even the first comm I don't know.
It was the first. I believe he had met you at the Western Hunt Expo on foot, walking up to the Vortex booth with you and potentially Paul and maybe a couple other folks. And I do believe this was the first email encounter.
Gotcha. So I was trying to remember if us meeting would have been, like just prior or to maybe like just at or sometime after that email. But yeah, so that would have been back in the days when, now we have I guess, just nature of things, a pretty robust booth at the expo. I mean, that's one of our favorite events of the year. The expo is awesome. It's just a great event. I personally enjoy it. I enjoy the people that I get to see there, but back in those days, and actually I equally enjoyed our booth then. It was a 10 by 20. It was like a kind of like a jewelry case. We had one high top table with a couple rented chairs. We always rented the trash can as well. And it was like me, Paul, from Vortex here, Paul Kendall from Utah was always there. So it was always a great time getting to see Paul. We'd eat Mexican food for like 4 days straight because Paul loves Mexican food. And dude, it's awesome, man. Like the booth would be rocking and rolling and be chatting with folks the whole time. And so that would have been in those days when it was, just a small 10 by 20. And I remember meeting Casey there because he rolled in. He's like, "Oh, I'm Casey." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And he goes, "Yeah, I like to hunt and I have a YouTube channel. And so I was thinking you might sponsor me." And I was like,
so smooth.
I was like, "Oh, cool. Hold on a second." I grabbed my smartphone and hit a couple buttons. I'm like, now we have two things in common. But no, but that was like, it was good. We got to, I'm totally just kidding. That was good. Yeah. It was good to meet Casey there. And even prior to that, I would say even at that time, like YouTube, like it was a thing, but it wasn't the thing that you see today. Like not by a million years. And so, Casey, I think had potentially at some point in time, he sent me a couple of his hunting videos that he's done, but he also sent me links to his like family channel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for me, just even and I'm not an early adopter of tech, you know what I mean? That's not my personality. It's like, when other kids were on computers, I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to go handline for Cutthroat, so that's like, wasn't necessarily in my nature. So like, I'm like watching this family channel. I'm like, it was almost with millions of views. Right. And for me, I was like, I don't understand. They're just grocery shopping. I don't get it. Like,
absolutely. But yeah, they have this incredible following. I actually, oddly enough, I have a note in these Vortex back then in 2013 or whatever. You guys had 1,200 YouTube subscribers. That's it. Just 1,200. Right. In case he had making a note of that in some of the communication, like, hey, like I could probably maybe help you guys get more YouTube subscribers because that's what I do for a living. Totally. But I think, look at like, again, time's of the essence, and it takes a while to, especially in the hunting community, to kind of like transition to the digital space. Back then, outdoor television was the king, followed probably by like print magazines, hunting forums. Those were like the main players of media back in 2012 and 13 and stuff. So it's pretty interesting how it's all changed. But I take pride in these old communications, and it's just cool that so many of the companies and the people that we have started working with are still to this day present in the business.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, 100%. And I think, honestly, like looking at, what, Casey had going on there and just trying to, like decipher like what, like I don't even think the term YouTuber I don't even think that was a thing, right? And vlogging was like super crazy. Like that was like a foreign concept for me. Like probably the first time I saw it was when Casey showed it to me, right? And like, what are these guys? But then you could see like, okay, it's like, so what's the there's obviously some magic here, right? There's a lot of magic here. Something is going on, whether I understand it or not. Something is going on here, and it's pretty big.
Sure. Yeah, he did well on the family side, but your reaction was such of every person we presented the idea to in the hunting space. Like, okay, there's something going on there, but how does it translate to hunting? Because right now, again, like TV and print, it was the place to be. So those early years were a lot of what we experienced. Like, man, do they see maybe the vision that we have in our head through Casey's experience with his family? And it was a challenge to like get brands and businesses to believe in the idea of YouTube, but then more importantly, to like be able to budget a fraction of the little spend over to what we're doing, because they have it pretty well tied up,
locked up
in other places,
or locked up, Brian. That's the official term.
I was going to go double check my quote. You guys are pretty locked up, but that's the common objection for any salesperson, right? Like, well, I'm good right now. We're taken care of, or I'm locked up, or what have you. So it was a process that took a lot of years to kind of slowly build trust and build relationships before we got to that date of 2015, where we're going to celebrate an anniversary of our relationship tomorrow.
That's amazing. And I think part of that is like, and you might even hear that in that email. It's like email. It's like, okay, like I don't want to be unfair and create some sort of like false hope or something, or lead somebody on perhaps. Sure. Right.
Yeah.
But you also want to hear more, like you want to understand it more. Cause like I said, like, not necessarily fully understanding it. And you're talking about those early days of like, TV's king and this, and these more at the time established content distribution platforms. I think the difficult thing to wrap, at least for me, somewhat around my head around with YouTube, is that there weren't any gatekeepers, right? It's like, well, anybody can just do it. Like there's no filter, there's no vetting process necessarily, which, looking at it now, depending on the person, the platform, their content, the quality of their content, how they're doing it, their brand, are they a match for your brand? But like, if those things line up, the fact that there's no gatekeepers that's the secret of it. That's actually the good part, because people who have these amazing talents, who are creative, who have a vision, their only limit is themselves and how hard they want to work at it.
Which, if you go back to previous to something like YouTube, and frankly, a lot of just any social platforms where people are like user generated content now, there was a huge barrier of entry. If you wanted to have a show on Sportsman's Channel or Outdoor Channel, well, you better have a lot of money, to the tune of oftentimes, hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce a show on the channel. And then the goal would be you would have to sell advertising space through those commercial breaks against that to recoup and hopefully make some money.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of sponsorship dollars just to hit zero. So you're in the red a couple $100,000 to have a TV show on the network. And oh, by the way, who knows what time the network is going to put your TV show out there? Like you might get the Tuesday at 3 a.m. time slot. You're certainly not going to be getting prime time like several brands got, right? You can think of those kind of legacy shows that you watched growing up or whatever. They were probably on Thursday night at prime time, and those people were in a different category and class than your typical guy or gal trying to put on a TV show. So just to break zero, you got to sell all the ad space against your existing show and hope that you end up in the positive, and then depending on your negotiation skills or your relationship, maybe you were able to make enough money to actually put something in your pocket, because that doesn't even take into account like paying your production team or your editors or,
there's a lot of costs that go into it. So it was a huge barrier of entry for people to go create hunting content. And then over time, what happened is you started to see like the same cyclical type of content over and over and over and over. And it kind of just became not necessarily a true representation of what a lot of us felt when we go hunting with our friends and our family. There was a difference there. It was, there wasn't a lot of failures showcased. It was predominantly successes. Certainly the whitetail space was much larger than the Western space on television. And it just wasn't representative to, I think, what so many of us felt and knew. And that has certainly changed with the ability to be your own individual producer on a YouTube or whatever other platforms now, which is great. It's the pendulum has really taken a swing from since 2013 until today with the way that content is consumed. And it's that was kind of like the belief we always had early days. And the only reason we had that belief was because Casey and his brother and family were able to kind of test it in mainstream markets like the family vlogging. And they saw great success with people becoming very well connected to the vlog style of content, kind of feeling a different level of emotional connection than maybe what you'd see on TV. And so we always hoped and thought that, man, what if we were able to duplicate that in the outdoor place? Would we have a similar result? And we didn't know at the time. We just had a hope and a feeling. But that was essentially the pitch we were giving to various companies like Mark and Vortex and several others. And our goal was to handpick companies that we liked the product. It was a good product. B, we liked the people. Like those two factors, and see that like we made a commitment early on too. We didn't want to just go chase sponsorships for money. And you unfortunately saw this a lot in TV where one year somebody would be with one particular brand and then maybe the next year they're with a competitor brand, and it was nothing more than a financial decision. So we wanted to never really get into that. And I'm pretty proud to say like we haven't done that for, been very tried and true to the companies that we were fortunate enough to work with. And we've walked away from a few because either that product or the people thing kind of changed, but we have stayed true. And like, there's some really like legacy brands we've worked with forever. And Vortex is one of the first.
For sure. And I'd say, all the things and, not to just, blow smoke, but like all the things that you're, accounting for right there are things that are important to us, so it's like you have a shared, I guess a shared set of what you value in a partnership or something like that, or relationship or friendship. Right. I mean, I think honestly, that's a big part of it, early on, even just when, talks with Kate, like we chat early on, whatever, like they were always very enjoyable conversations. There wasn't like, oh, well, I think probably the front end of it was just like, oh, what have you been up to? How's your hunting been? Whatever. Right. Like, it's not like, well,
sure.
we need to get down to brass tacks.
Yeah, definitely different than like a corporate America setting. I would say in this industry, because it is smaller and niche, relationships are paramount. Mm-hmm. And, if that isn't, it doesn't matter what kind of analytics or production you might have. If you don't have a great relationship and there isn't that level of trust, there's a chance that you're probably not going to be as successful comparatively to somebody who has just a really great personal relationship. They become friends. They trust each other. And I think that certainly is a little bit different within the hunting space compared to maybe what you'd find in a typical like sponsorship environment.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. I think we're lucky in a lot of ways on both sides because, we sell, hunting, shooting, optics. You guys are creating hunting content. You're passionate about, hunting and the types of products that you use to, engage in that activity. And like, we're both passionate and care about those same things. So you automatically, like I always say, like, if you're a hunter and you go to like a party and you don't know anybody, like you kind of see, like if you find the other hunter in the room, like you guys are joined at the hip, like it's like Did we just become best friends?
100%.
So I think we're lucky in that regard, because you start out with almost like a bond or a brotherhood in a lot of ways, and that's going to depend on, the person or the entity, I mean, there's definitely variables at play there. Well, that's not always going to be the case, but I'd say probably more often than not, it is.
Most certainly. What, you've been with Vortex for a long time. How did you get into the outdoor and hunting industry? Because there's so many people that we have met throughout the years that reach out to us that are really interested in cracking into the industry, like doing something that there's passion behind, right? It's more than a job. You love to hunt, fish, be outside. Like, why wouldn't I want to work in that industry? Walk us through how you kind of got started and where your initial breakthrough came.
So, yeah, and I guess it's probably just by, a little bit of a grind and some luck. And like you said, sometimes, who or a relationship, we already covered, graduated from Washington State. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
But when I got, just my entire lifelong hunter, lifelong angler, just always very curious about every facet of it, not necessarily like a singular focus, which I always say it's probably prevented me in some ways of being great at I'm an awesome bass fisherman, or I'm an amazing whitetail hunter. But I love trying new things. I was my family fished, nobody fly fished. I'm I want to learn how to fly fish. We hunted, nobody bow hunted. I'm I want to learn how to bow hunt, and so I always kind of had that natural curiosity, which I think gave me a fairly, I'm not pro at any of those things to this day. Right. But, I guess just a more diverse, skill set or palette of knowledge, if you will. And just, a variety of experiences to pull from. So anyway, graduate, I'm going to give you the long story, whether you like it or not at this point, but,
I'm into it, Mark, at this point.
Yeah, you're pot committed, Brian. But yeah, finished up school, obviously passionate about the outdoors. Got a job at an Orvis retail store, right? That's not some crazy, prestigious position in some ways, but it was fly fishing and I was interested in it and got to sell fly rods and talk to people about fly fishing. And while I was there, I did kind of try my best to immerse myself in that world. I'm okay, while I'm here doing this, all I'm going to do is fly fish, actually. Steelhead fishing in Washington, it's hard enough, let alone trying to fly fish for the darn thing. So, yes. But I went, whenever I went real winter steelhead fishing, which I wasn't I didn't even know a lot about fly fish for winters, but that's what I did. So anyway, I had that job. It was great. Got an opportunity at Outdoor Emporium in downtown Seattle. And it was killer, just an outdoor store. I always thought it was, to this day, one of my favorite jobs. Great people, awesome culture. Just it was this. It was a bigger outdoor store, but it was just a very good old boys feel to it, if you will. And yeah, we just had awesome customers and sold again. It was almost a miniature big box store, I guess, or a smaller big box store. Marine department, fly fishing department, hunting department, big fishing department. A lot of salmon, steelhead stuff. And then eventually got an opportunity at Cabela's, and this is kind of where it goes via a real good buddy of mine, Mike Scobie, who I met him at a local firearms and archery shop that was close to my house in Washington. And so I would see him there, and then I actually met him, or then he actually gave me a lot of really good hunting spots around the Pullman area. And so anyway, we were just buddies for a while. I was working at Outdoor Emporium. He'd actually gone to work for Cabela's in Sydney.
What's Mike's history? Because he's pretty well known in the industry. I don't know him personally, but I've heard his name all the time.
So, I mean, it's going to be more, probably there's a lot more to it than but I'll give you the cliff notes that I know. I met Mike, he was working at a retail store, kind of like how I started out. And then he went to go work for Cabela's, doing it was kind of editorial based, content based, for the internet department, which actually at the time when he started there was a brand new department. And then actually, eventually when I started there, it was still, relatively new as well. I mean, the internet at that time, that probably would have been so when I got there, that would have been '02, I think. Like e-commerce and things like that were still in its infancy, right?
Infancy. Yeah.
Like I think they'd just really gotten a website not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
People were still saying, questions like, well, would you be comfortable buying something off the internet? Things like that.
Yeah. So, pretty much right beyond the .com, era, right there, right at the forefront.
Yeah. And so anyway, he called me up and he's like, dude, there's a copywriter position open in the internet department. He's like, I think it'd be a really good opportunity. It's a good company. I think you should try it, And I'm like, and I was literally doing everything I could to like not get the job, which sounds like crazy, but like I loved the West Coast. Like I enjoyed my job as a retail job, but I loved it, right? Like I liked people, I liked the work that I was doing. And had a fairly serious girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I appreciate you reaching out, but like, like probably not. He's like, well, just talk to this other guy, So, had a phone call with a guy. His name was Mark as well, and of course, we kind of did our phone interview, and it probably didn't hurt that when he called me, we're down fishing buoy 10 for a week. And he's like, oh, what are you up to? I'm like, oh, we're just, fishing for salmon for a week. So anyway, they're like, they had a product knowledge test, and which I think is like a really cool thing for a company to have to like, as like part of their hiring process of like, like, well, we want to know that you actually know about hunting and fishing. You're going to be involved in this. You need to know about it. Right. And I think you probably know, like, it's hard to fake that because it is so nuanced and it's very easy to spot something that's inauthentic, right?
Yes.
And so he's like, yeah, we'd love to fly you out. You could take the PS test. We'll have an interview. We'll show you around the area. And I was like, Mark, I tell you what, I appreciate you guys like extending this opportunity to me. Like, it's like more like I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, but like, I also want to be respectful of like your time and money. And I'm like, why don't you just send the test out? I'll have somebody proctor it, And he's like, no, we'd like to have you out. So anyway, way long-winded story. I fly out to Sydney.
You're trying to get him to send you the test and have like a notary there.
But yeah, I mean, like, I was just like, like I didn't know anything about Nebraska. Like in my head, it was probably this, stereotypical views of that state, like, oh, flat, nothing out there. Not, like, I mean, I'm in Washington. I've got the ocean, I've got rainforest, I've got high desert, alpine lakes, like everything's at your fingertips, right? I'm like, I just, didn't really want to leave that. And so I flew out there, took the test, hung out for a couple of days. He showed me around the country, like, which was like really cool. Like, in what interview does somebody like say, hey, why don't you hop in the truck after, and we'll go drive and we'll check out some public land and whatever. And they offered me the position, and I was like, you know what, dude, you only live once, life's an adventure. And I took it, and I've worked there for probably like 7 years or something. And then I
love, just to interrupt, because it's so great. I love that the job was just called, like, it was just the internet department. Like, that is so hilarious to me. Like, yeah, we have an opening on the internet department. Like, imagine real time today, what company would have an internet department job? Right. It's fascinating, right? It's like, it wasn't that long ago that companies barely had a website and they called it the internet department, comparatively to where we are today with like the dynamics of e-commerce.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the internet department, that was everything from people creating like product pages, right? So to be on the website. So I was a copywriter. So I was writing copy that would go on those product pages and things like that. And then you had IT was part of the internet, like, like it was kind of everything all encompassed. And then you had, Mike's side of things, which was the content side of things. Like, they were trying to create like, interesting and informational content, which looking back, really forward thinking, in my opinion, to like essentially be engaging in content-based marketing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it was cool. And yeah, I was a copywriter there for a number of years, ended up in the marketing brand management department doing media relations with some great folks up there. And I was like, I loved it there, but I was also like ready for something new, which is not, I guess, like somewhat unusual for me. Cause like, I guess sometimes I'm comfortable with being comfortable, but yeah, just was researching companies, knew I wanted to be in the outdoor space, found Vortex, and it was just like, it was a really cool company. Or one thing that stood out to me that was cool is during my time at Cabela's, like, there were VPs, but, one guy was a VP, but he actually started at Cabela's sweeping floors because his van broke down in town, right? And so you got to look at like, that's like a very early Cabela's employee, and now that guy's a VP, right? And so spotted Vortex and was really intrigued by it. And it wasn't like a huge company, but that's what was cool about it at the same time, is like, it was like this really neat opportunity to be, to go be a part of something that was like, I would be not accurate to say it was in its infancy, because like there's like a huge backstory before I showed up. So like, but it was still had a lot of potential for sure. Like it's that when I started is dramatically different than what the Vortex that you see today. Right.
Yes.
And so, yeah, just made the jump. And like I said, I never thought I'd leave the coast, and I keep moving further east, but I think I'm good now. I think I've found found a home here, and I love it here, and the people are great, and the company is amazing. And you touched on earlier, you couldn't have a better culture. The ownership is amazing. I mean, it's a family owned, veteran owned company. And it feels like family, and they make you feel like family. And, people talk a lot about our VIP warranty, which stands for very important promise. And, it's just like, unconditional lifetime, no fault warranty. If you're a Vortex customer, we're going to take care of you before, during, and after the sale. But like that VIP, concept, for Vortex as a company extends to its employees, right? Like they, we really subscribe to the golden rule, like treat other people how you want to be treated, right? And they do that to the nth degree here. It really is a special place. And I'd say probably a rare thing anywhere, outdoor space, any space.
Yeah, I would agree. I think your culture is really unique. We're super lucky in the sense we kind of get to see under the hood of a lot of different companies over the years. And, what does their brand perception look like on the exterior versus what is the culture on the interior? And do those align, or are there some differences there? The Vortex one is really interesting because you guys have really are more vulnerable to showcasing the people in the company, whereas a lot of brands are very protective of only showing the product and having a very polished brand story, and nothing can be authentic, nothing can be unscripted, nothing can be spontaneous. It's all very planned out. And I would say at Vortex is just like the opposite. You guys obviously have great, product marketing and brand awareness and things of that nature. But what really stands out, particularly if you guys follow them on Instagram, and if you are not following them on Instagram, you're really missing out on some hilarity, because the culture and what you guys share over the years, this is not a new thing. This has been going on for a long time, is so funny, and it's so authentic. And it's literally like, I feel like I'm watching like an episode of The Office or something, with the inner workings of various personalities that have kind of come to light over the years. And it's some of the funniest stuff out there. And I think like the toaster oven is the legendary thing. Tell us a little bit about the toaster oven for anybody that missed it, because that's kind of where I feel like things started really taking off.
So yeah, and before we get to the famed toaster oven, I think you nailed it. And one thing I always like to say is like we take our work very seriously, we take our products very seriously, we take our customers very seriously, but we try not to take ourselves too seriously. And I think that um and I think the company being comfortable and giving people like the leash and the autonomy to showcase, to be silly or just really just be ourselves, um, is a testament to hiring the right people to where you can be comfortable with that, right?
Sure.
Um, and and there's a lot of great. I'm not saying there's not great people other places at all by any means, because like I love the outdoor industry and there's a bazillion amazing individuals. So I don't want to give that insinuation in any way, but yeah, I mean, we like to have fun. We like to be ourselves. We like to kid each other. The social media department likes to pick on me a lot. So
elaborate on picking on you, Mark. I want to hear more about this because you have become a bit of a personality, and usually you're having to defend yourself for one reason or another. They've tried to sell your truck a number of times, although you have a new truck now, so maybe it's not as prevalent as the old truck. But the old truck,
yeah, it's a fine truck too.
I want to hear more like behind the scenes of why are you such a target of antagonization?
Because I sit next to Catherine, and she's actually one of my favorite people here. Like we get along famously. Like she's one of my like super fun. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of all, I guess, a lot of the people that it's almost probably by default in a way, just because we sit next to each other, right? But yeah, just always, I don't know, coming up with ideas. Oh, this would be funny. This is silly. And a lot of it's stuff that like the stuff that you see is just creative people like just doing stuff that comes naturally, or this is funny that's happening. I mean, that's the beauty of cell phone these days. Something funny's going on, you can just hold your phone up and it's, just a memory captured in time. But yeah, so no, but yeah. So, and then just like, we want to be authentic, right? And just like how you guys showcase hunting in a very real, raw, authentic way, with even just like how you might joke around or teasing each other, or just really more documentary style. That's kind of how I guess a lot of that happens around here as well. So yeah, I mean, the same idiot Mark that you see on social media is the same idiot Mark that is sitting in front of you right now. Very authentic. But
the red coat of lies the other day, I was literally crying laughing. Tell the story about how that came to be.
Hey, I put that. So, okay. So that was a red coat, like, so that could date back to, the early years of America, right? It was a costume one. It was from some, probably some Amazon costume department. But so Graham, when he moved to the social media department from consumer sales, they made him wear that as he walked up the stairs, as essentially like an insinuation of being a traitor, I guess, if you will. And so I had shot a turkey this spring in a place on a person's property that I was not comfortable divulging. In front of everybody, because Eric was like, "Hey, where'd you shoot it? Did you shoot it over here?" And I said, "No, Eric, that's not where I shot it." And I lied. I did lie. I admit to lying, but I was protecting the anonymity of the landowner, as well as I'm very sensitive to just spot giving in a open forum. And I don't think that's a bad quality to have. I actually, before I got the chance to say like, hey, because I would have told Eric like, dude, no, this is where I shot. I just didn't want to, broadcast it to the greater world, which I think is very fair. And then they made me feel very guilty for lying and lying to my friends. And so to appease I wore the red coat of shame.
Did you proactively nominate yourself for the red coat, or did your lie get exposed and you were forced into it?
Oh, yeah, the lie got exposed. Yeah. Yeah. It was like, yeah, I got caught.
You got caught.
Yeah.
No chance you're wearing that coat if you don't get caught.
But I mean, I was the
truth has finally been revealed.
Yes, the truth will set you free. But yeah, I did. I had a high level of guilt because I was like, I lied to my friends, but I felt like I was doing it. I was doing it for the greater good. It's conflicting here.
To paint the picture, this entire scene played out live through stories on Vortex's Instagram page. And it was so funny because Mark is surrounded by his colleagues and friends, and they were obviously giving him significant amount of grief. And he was having to explain, similarly to how he just did here, why he lied, which I don't disagree that it's a terrible thing. I think you protected, someone else's spot, another landowner. You didn't blow it up in a group setting.
I think that's part of a hunting code of conduct. Actually, that's one of those nuanced things. And I don't want to be like, it's not that I don't ever share a spot or this, that, the other, but yeah. And actually I think they followed up with an Instagram poll asking that same question, who was in the right? And I did win. I was vindicated, Brian.
Speaking of winning
what's
not,
what's that? That like the Innocence Project. Yeah, it was like that.
So you won that poll, but what happened in the spaghetti shootout, Mark?
I tell you this, I overall I lost Spaghetti Shootout, which is it's a new series that we launched, I guess, at press time, right? Not my idea. But
also so funny.
Appreciate that. Yeah, you can check that out on the Vortex Nation podcast YouTube channel if you're so inclined. But yeah, that was kind of the brainchild of actually really in a lot of ways one of the owners of Vortex, so like just kind of like, oh man, I really like this concept, and like I think it'd be cool if we did something like that. And it was really almost like serendipitous because at the almost simultaneously, like we were, kind of like trying to brainstorm potential new concepts, and some of those new concepts were like in line with that. And so we just kind of married it up and,
walk people through what it means. What is the spaghetti shootout and what could they expect to see if they go watch that?
So yeah, the entire idea was literally throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what would stick. But the concept is, I would say, like if you're familiar with shows like Around the Horn, Pardon the Interruption, kind of like a debate style game show, if you will, with points that I think at least right now, like in the first episode, it pitted myself against Ryan Muckenhern, who is one of my very good friends at Vortex, just a consummate outdoorsman, wealth of knowledge, gun knowledge, hunting knowledge, very, very knowledgeable. He's he's essentially a co-host on the Vortex Nation podcast. So just a very common guest, Jim and I pepper him with questions. He has the answers, and that's how it works. So there's 5-question format. They ask us both the questions. We give our arguments. Jim awards points, I would say, at random, at his discretion, sometimes without rhyme or reason. And at the end of the day, somebody wins. Which
also, might I add, takes away points.
Yes, you can lose points. Yes, and I lost a lot of points.
The first battle, Mark, you were doing well, but your cheat sheet really came to haunt you.
Yeah, I'm not an organized person, but I do like if we're doing a podcast, like I like to have at least a note sheet of kind of some bullets that I want, helps me organize my thoughts, make sure I don't forget anything or something like that. And I had some of those notes, Ryan didn't. He was just speaking, off the cuff, which is probably, I would say, admittedly, more the spirit of what it should be.
Very impressed by Ryan's responses, might I add on record, considering he had no bullet points to consult with,
Yeah.
But nothing against you, Mark. I probably would have been just like you. I would have been wanting bullet points because I work off that better. But yeah, it's a great format. It's very much on par with what you'd see on ESPN. Everyone involved so far is just so funny, and the back and forth nature and the friendship is really what you can tell. The camaraderie you guys have as a group makes it next level. But again, it's just so different. It's outside the box. You would never see an outdoor company do that, but yet you guys do that, and it does so well. And there's example after example after example, from more kind of thought, strategic, planned out initiatives like this one to the ones that are just completely spontaneous with what appears to be a lot less thought. All of it is just so funny.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it. And like the spaghetti shootout concept, it's almost like a hybrid, right? Because it's like, okay, it's this planned thing in some ways, but a lot of the in between it's just not,
it's unscripted. Yeah, most definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, it's just,
is that going to be like a weekly series that you guys do? What's the cadence on that?
I think right now the cadence is planned for like monthly, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but it's all fun. And that's what, we want. I guess we treat each other, or like, whatever, a lot of the content that we make or our relationships with our customers, like, social media, I guess we try to use it as social media. Like, we don't want to be like necessarily selling somebody, but we can create a relationship with somebody.
Sure.
Just like you guys on YouTube. Like, if I watch something on TV, I might be entertained by it. I might really like it, but I'm not necessarily going to form a relationship or get to know that person or get to know about that person likely in any way, unless, you read like, the Inquirer or something, right? Which I know you're a big fan of, but
my favorite publication.
So yeah, like it's just another way to connect, I guess. And it's fun.
Right? Yeah, 100%. The other thing you guys are like stolen from mainstream is like the fall is here campaigns. We talked a little bit about that earlier in the start, but it's very much like a play off the old kind of ESPN Sports Center commercials of back in the day when they'd bring in various athletes to ESPN's Bristol headquarters, and they'd also mascots. They just brought in personalities from the sporting world and leveraged their sports center anchors into these collaborative, funny commercials. And you guys kind of took a similar approach and tried to flip it into the hunting space. It's been going on for a long time. And again, just really well thought out, super funny, and always timed perfectly right as we slide into some of the fall seasons.
Yeah. I mean, those are fun and they're fun to concept and, fun to shoot, and you get to involve, like you said, people in the company. You get to involve folks like yourself at times. And it's just, they're collaborative projects that, oftentimes showcase like, our personality and passion for the outdoors, but also like, that shared, I guess, passion for those types of things, as well as like, wanting to laugh. Like, I think people want to laugh, right? And so I think, yeah, those have been a long-standing tradition around here, and hopefully they keep moving forward.
I mean, it's one of the greatest things we've ever been able to be a part of. We got to do one with the guys of the Hunting Public, also Sam Solholt. It was so funny filming it because it's a very well done production. Like, they got like sound engineers, several camera guys, lighting people. Like, it's a very different than what we're accustomed to doing, but that's also what made it fun, because all of us that do the YouTube videos or whatever used to pretty much be on camera, but these are more like scripted things. Like, hey, I need you to say this, read this script. And so that was a disaster for all of us that are terrible at any kind of script reading. That was super funny. And then just having all these different personalities. Aaron Warburton from the THP was he's like phenomenal calling with his mouth, his natural voice and mouth. And so he was doing turkey calls, like owl hoots, coyote. I mean, he can make all different types of noises. He just had our entire group of people rolling, laughing, as well as like the production team. But the finished product was pretty neat how it all turned out. Certainly a highlight though to be a part of one of those campaigns for the fall.
For sure. No, it was. And like, a lot of that stuff with Aaron and the joking around and stuff, like that's what makes those projects so great. I'd have to go back and look at it and see if any of that actually like made the final production, but it was sure fun in between. Like you said, people are laughing, rolling, joking around. You guys are being silly. We're being silly, like it's good.
It is good. What do you got going on for the fall coming up?
Man, pretty packed actually. So maybe not as packed as you guys, but gonna go hunt Kodiak for blacktails. So that'll be really cool. So gonna go do that up in the Alpine in August.
Have you done that one before in August?
So not on Kodiak. I've done POW once in August, and admittedly, like that was a very challenging hunt. We flew into an alpine lake and just the terrain was pretty gnarly. We had some pretty gnarly weather, a lot of tent time. But to this day, probably one of my favorite hunts because of that. And I'm not saying I'm like some sort of crazy badass, oh, I need to suffer fest to have a good time. That one definitely it challenged me, but I also it was also still one of my favorite hunts of all time. So gonna do that on Kodiak. So that'll be great. Gonna try and chase elk with the bow in September. October, I don't have anything really kind of TBD for October, which is usually rare. Usually I go chase blacktails in Washington in October, but I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance to do that this year. And then whitetails here in Wisconsin. That's truly our bow hunting whitetails the first 2 weeks of November, I think is just purely one of the most magical things. I've fallen in love with it. I never hunted whitetails until I moved to Nebraska. And man, I instantly fell in love with it there. And, Wisconsin's a great whitetail state. And so, the first 2 weeks in November are generally reserved for that. And I'm going to try and chase mule deer after that. And then hopefully maybe take a little bit of a break. So
what's the addiction to the whitetails for people listening that are more inclined to chase mule deer and elk? Obviously, we predominantly are doing the Western hunting, but man, there's an interesting draw to the Midwest around Halloween through the middle of November that I've only been able to experience it a couple of times, but there's something there to it. What is it in your opinion that makes those couple of weeks so special?
Man, I mean, I guess it's everything that I think anybody loves about hunting. Whatever your favorite thing to hunt is, it's oh man, it's the time of the year. It's the smells in the air because the season is at this point. It's the air feels like this. The animals are acting like this, and man, that whitetail rut. Sometimes you got to hunt for those days, but when you get those days when it's magic and it's on, or you've got a hot doe in the area and the bucks are moving and they're grunting and, they're callable and a deer that might otherwise, you'd never see, but you get to see that deer because of that, and I'm not a big camera guy. I hunt some private, predominantly public. Just by circumstance, because I won't turn down a sweet piece of private. But dude, it's just it's cool. And then, just the strategy behind it. I think a lot of people think from the outside in, if you're unfamiliar with whitetail hunting, if your perception of whitetail hunting is maybe, something from what I'd say is the traditional outdoor television model, I'd say that's, it can be a pretty big departure from what a lot of people are doing. And you might be surprised at how similar in a lot of ways some whitetail hunters are hunting to a Western hunter. I mean, for instance, like this is just one example, I guess or like, Eric in our department, phenomenal whitetail hunter. I mean, he is just like, he is a really good whitetail hunter. He's good at reading terrain. And I think, and, knowing what the bucks are going to do, where they're going to want to be, where they're likely to travel. And I think people don't know there's that big of a chess match going on, or how far you might go. You might be hiking in 3 miles to get to, this because, this, you're reading topo maps and there's a saddle here and you think the bucks are going to bed over here. So you're going to position yourself here, but the wind's likely going to be doing this. So you're going to, maybe going to have to shift and do that. And maybe your plan A, when you got there, the wind's totally different than what the forecast is. So then you have to pivot, and I mean, I think a lot of guys now, at least I know myself, like, you get back in, like, there's definitely times where it's like, you're not dragging a deer out. You're gonna have to cut that deer up and bring it out just like you would out west or whatever. I mean, I hunted one spot this last year where I got to where I parked, put on my waders, waded up a creek nearly a mile because it wasn't a way that I could access a piece of public. And I didn't end up killing a deer back there, but it would have been really cool if I did. And I saw some deer. I saw one buck. But I got back in there and the wind, like I said, the wind was actually doing the complete opposite of what was forecasted. There's just so much they're cool. I don't know. And they're just cool. Yeah. I love them.
I think it's something it's on my list to do more of. And it's always a juggle of, schedule and time and like, where do you spend your resources? It's also great to chase mule deer that time of year, but there is something special about being in the Midwest in that time frame that is hard to explain, especially doing like the hang and hunt style that you guys are so used to doing. You're not necessarily sitting on a food plot and an established tree stand that's been there for 20 years. Like, you're moving around and playing that strategy game and doing the best you can to kind of outsmart these little deer. And the other thing, like when we came out, we also did a little turkey hunting that trip. And I was surprised at the topography of parts of Wisconsin that I bet a lot of people wouldn't necessarily recognize, but it's certainly like much more terrain variation, topography than you would have expected, elevation game, a lot of opportunities to get 3 to 5 miles back on a piece of public and have to earn it. Like, you're not dragging one of those big whitetails out from that far. That's a fact.
No, I mean, yeah, you'd kill yourself. And I think I love tree stand hunting. Like I do. Like, I think a lot of, or some people, like just the thought of it and being that, static for so long. I don't know, man. Like I like trying to figure out where you're going to be. And, you can definitely obviously move throughout the day. If something's not working, it's like, let's bounce. Right. But you kind of push your chips in a little bit, at least for a while. And just that elevated perch and being able to, you kind of become part of the landscape,
Yeah.
And then once the woods calm down, like, you really get to observe nature in a really cool way. And then when a buck does come through, like, I don't know, man, just being up there. I mean, that's trying to pick that hole where he, trying to get, hopefully he stops, or, you have to stop him in that hole, because usually it's, super thick and you can't just shoot everywhere. And I'd say that's a lot of reasons why you do have to use a tree stand, is because you just wouldn't get a shot otherwise in a lot of places. I mean, there's people are very successful hunting from the ground. So, but I mean, a lot of places I hunt, you have to have that elevated perch to be able to kind of shoot down into those holes,
Have you transitioned to the saddle game? Are you kind of tree stand guy still?
I'm a believer that there's room for both. I don't think it's an either or. I think they are both amazing options, particularly when you get, like, if you're trying to hang and hunt, you get stands like, Lone Wolf custom gear stands, which are, they're lightweight, they're packable, you can get those back in pretty far. I've used a regular Lone Wolf climber for a lot of years. A lot of people aren't climber guys. Like, I love a climbing stand, but maybe that's why it's kind of what I started with and what I know. I personally like, it's fairly lightweight. It's fairly packable. You got to have the right tree. You can't have a tree with a lot of limbs. In my opinion, like or at least where I hunted in Nebraska primarily, and a lot of the places that I hunt here, you actually could get a climber up. I like that there's no steps. You get in, you shimmy up the tree, get in your harness, boom, you're done. But that said, like I've done a lot of saddle hunting too, or not a lot, but the last probably 2 years, I've done a lot. I'd say maybe primarily saddle hunting, I guess, at least 50-50. And I mean, you can't deny the weight savings. You can't deny that everything fits in your backpack. So just your mobility going through the woods, nothing's hanging up on something. When you go to duck under a branch, my climber is still pretty compact, but it hangs up on stuff, and then it's clanging and banging, and you can't get through as cleanly as you like. So then you're making extra noise, and you're getting, even just kind of like a pain, right? So
yeah,
I mean, the saddles, the saddles are, I mean, they're comfortable. Like, I think they're deceivingly comfortable. Like, you look at, like, oh, can I hang in there? Oh, you can hang in that thing all day. The more I hunt out of a saddle, the more I do it, so yeah, I like it. But I think it just depends, like if I had a piece of private that I was cultivating and I was like, managing, and I could put stands wherever I wanted, and I was like maybe less of a, bouncing around, like I probably would just hang some stands there,
Sure.
So
Yeah. That's the beauty though.
Yeah.
You've got different tactics and tools, and the objective's the same, just your method changes a bit depending on what type of access you might have. And I think you and I are on the same page. Like, any access is great access. Like if you can get it, by all means, go to town. But if you can't, then obviously the public is a great backup plan that's going to provide different opportunities and challenges. Out of all the species that you are fortunate enough to kind of chase, you kind of walked us through like the opportunities from Kodiak to elk to mule deer to whitetail. Is there one that stands out? I know you just kind of walked us through your passion for whitetail since you've become a Midwesterner, but as a tried and true Westie, do elk take the cake?
Okay, like this is a very tough question. This is a very tough question, actually. It shouldn't be. But I'd say, even though, like, just because what I grew up hunting was Columbia blacktails with the rifle, like there's a very special place in my heart for hunting Columbia blacktails in kind of like that more like logging country, rainforesty type habitat. Like, I love that. Like I said, just for everything that it entails, the sights, the sounds, the smells, just the other wildlife you see. But whitetails they're pretty amazing critters, and they are fun to hunt. And I'll throw in, because I can't make a decision, that's just part of my nature, but black bears, man. Black bears, I love hunting spring and fall black bears. Like, and I don't know, like, I'm going on that insane blacktail hunt this year. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Like, going to be like a lifelong memory adventure. But it's actually killing me that I would probably be hunting black bears in the Alpine at the same time. So like, it's like that's an either or for me this year. And like, I just love hunting bears. I think bears are the greatest. I love hunting bears. Like, they're awesome.
That's an interesting take. I cannot believe for the life of me, you might be the only person that grew up out west. You did not mention elk.
I love archery hunting elk too. Like, I do. Like, but like, if you made me pick, like because like, I think I'm a deer hunter at heart, so I'm always going to pick deer.
Blacktail, I respect immensely, because I know where you grew up. I know what that terrain looks like. I know those deer. They're an underrated species, probably because they're not as many of them for folks to hunt. But where they live and the time of year that you might see a mature one is a super special thing. So I got a lot of respect for that. But you lost me at black bear hunting before elk.
Dude, I'm weird. Like, if you like, I just think they are the coolest animal. they're cool to eat. I like the fact that in some states you can be hunting with a rifle in August. I think is like one of the greatest things on earth. And then like again in the spring, like you're hunting big game with the rifle in the spring. You've had cabin fever all year long. You're back in the mountains and you're rifle hunting, and you're like hardcore optics intensive, hiking your tail off, crossing creeks. Like it's like a really tough, good hunt.
I would agree. It is the timing of hunting spring black bears. It's hard to beat being in the woods that time of year. It's beautiful out. You know, the elk are grazing on the hill slopes. Like, depending on how late in the season, you got maybe some newborns dropping. Like, could be beautiful country. Spring flowers are out there, no doubt. But man, September, elk screaming still is gonna.
That's your number one.
It's got to be above that. Has to be.
So okay, so mule deer, whitetail, blacktails, black bears, elk. That's your number one.
I'd say archery elk is number one, just simply because of the vocalization and how much fun you can have without filling a tag, even if the elk are talking and you just have the opportunity to like be within that 100-yard radius of their presence.
I agree. That is very special. That's why I said this is a tough question.
And it is tough.
Like I do like they're all so special and so cool in their own way, like in their own unique way, that like it's hard to compare one against another. Like, well, this one's there. It's like they're all great.
If we just did a spaghetti shootout, Mark, I'm positive you would have lost points on bears.
Probably. Good. More for me.
No doubt. I think, yeah, it's a tough thing, man. I don't know. It's also fun because they all offer such different stuff, you know, different times of the year. And you mentioned it earlier. Like, I feel like I fall in this category too. Like, I feel all of us do. Kind of a generalist, you know, I'm not the greatest at anything. Even as a kid growing up, I always changed my interest in sports. Like, as the seasons changed, the kids these days that play like soccer year round blows my mind. I would get so burned out of one sport the entire year. It was so enjoyable to be able to like, oh, it's, you know, summer, we're playing baseball, fall, time to play football. You know, you just change the seasons. It's similar with hunting. Whatever hunt you're on at the time is pretty dang enjoyable and probably your favorite at the moment. And then you transition to the next hunt and you're like, not gonna lie, man, this one was also pretty fun. Whichever one you're on is the greatest.
Dude, I mean, you nailed it. It's like you get done with any hunt, you're like, that was the best hunt ever. And then you go hunting the next time, like, no, wait, no, that was the best hunt ever. Like, it's just the one, like they're all like, it's just so cool. And you know, if you do a little research and if you got the time, right? Like, I mean, you can like, which can be a problem for like your marriage or something like that, but you can hunt year round. You know, like it's crazy. Like it's awesome.
We had a debate on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, you know, debating specifically elk and mule deer. I love that you introduced bears and whitetail. Like, what is a superior species? Because there's a big amount of people, although I would say smaller than the elk folks, that are tried and true mule deer only. Literally, like, we had multiple people even message us on a social media poll that we did. They were like, elk are the dumbest big animals in the world. No challenge whatsoever. Mule deer all day, every day. And we both know several people that are in the community of hunting that are, you know, you're aware of them through their own personal brand, or maybe they have a business or whatever, that are very hyper-focused mule deer guys. And that's kind of it. Like, nothing else matters. Maybe they do some bear hunting. They're not doing whitetail. They're definitely not doing elk. It's like mule deer and bear, maybe a sheep or something, but you know, that's it.
I couldn't live that way. Like, I just feel like, well, yeah, I mean, that's also part of I've got severe FOMO. So like, whenever something, like if something's going on, like I want to be doing it. And I'm acting like I hunt all the time. I don't, you know, I mean, I'm a pretty regular dude. Right. But, like, just like, if I didn't hunt spring bears this year, actually, like as passionate as I am, like just like timing and this, that, the other, like it kills me that this is like, I marked this down. It's like, that's 1 year of my life that I didn't get to do that, you know? And like
just missed opportunity.
Yeah.
That's the challenge with being hyper focused on one species is you don't get to go to Kodiak and experience like how unbelievable that place is, you know, and yeah, it's a different subspecies of deer. They're not mule deer, but they're so fun. And then you have the dynamic of seeing like a true like Kodiak bear, which when you see them in person, it's hard to like put your arms around what that creature is walking in your vision. They're so ginormous.
Yeah. You know, I'm like, okay, if I don't see one actually, but
yeah, I think you'll be safer there in the summer because a lot of the bears will be lower, like going after fish. Whereas in the winter months, like we were there in November or whatever, and we saw 6 in the week we were there. One big male at like 300 yards, and that was like, we're good.
Yeah.
You pull that thing up in the Vortex spotting scope and crank her up. Holy smokes.
Yeah. You're like, he's coming at us. Oh, wait, no.
It definitely changed our plans of where we were planning on going, because we were glassing at a buck deer, trying to turn him up that was right in the vicinity. And we immediately decided, well, let's go ahead and find a new one. Cause that guy was on the hunt for something, and it's just an impressive species. But the point is like, if you're only just a singular species person, you're going to miss out on the experiences of some of these other cool hunts. I'd love to do the spring black bear hunts in Alaska. Like you got to be prepared because you have to put in really early, and then it's like a really long delay to hunt them. But that looks just fantastic. You know, sitting in a tree in the middle of the Kansas or Wisconsin or Missouri in the fall, you got to try that like at least once in your life because it's special. It's different. High country mule deer in the velvet, man. One of the most neat things you can be a part of. Very challenging, but there's just so many different variables. And then by all means, you know, I think everybody has aspirations to call in a bugling bull to bow range. And man, yeah, if you only picked one of those, you would really be missing out.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky, you know, and then each one of those things, like, even if you are, you know, have a more singular focus, like it's not that you won't get to see amazing landscapes, like you said, because like a mule deer in the high country during the early season is a very different animal and in a very different place in November. Right. So then you've got the same, you know, potentially actually the same deer. You could chase the exact same deer. I'm not saying that's likely to happen necessarily, but let's say it did, you know, in the high country, and then have a hunt that's really like the polar opposite just a few months later. You know, and bears are the same way. Like, you know, you could hunt black bears in Arizona in August when they're on the prickly pears, which I've always wanted to do or see or try. That's going to be nothing like a coastal hunt in Southeast Alaska.
Yeah.
Same animal. So then you're like, you've got, you know, not only do you have all these species that you can chase, but you can chase these species at different times of year with different weapons. It's quite overwhelming, Brian.
It is. There's not enough time on a calendar, certainly in marriage, to afford those opportunities. But if you are a younger person and you're listening and you're single,
live.
Get on going, get on out there. Go see some of these things we're talking about. They're there.
Just
takes a little time, a little effort.
Just go dirtbag it. Just go. Like, I mean, that is, you know, you always have hindsight looking back, right? Like you'll always have that. But like, yeah, before marriage, and actually even probably before, like, you know, kids come into the picture, like you don't realize, like when I look at all the time that I just merely wasted and the things that I could have been doing, I was an idiot, you know, but you can't, it's hard to see that. Some people are really good at seeing that. And you're like, that person's taking advantage of life, right?
Yeah. You know who comes to mind as a young person that's just really crushing life? Ted from the Hunting Public. Started with THP when he was 19, right out of high school. Made the decision strategically, with the help of his folks, not to enroll in college, but to take this opportunity as being an unpaid intern with a couple guys filming whitetail hunts that had a YouTube channel. And now, several years later, as a young person, all he does is hunt and fish. That's it.
Yeah.
He's living a great life. No real commitments that I'm aware of, but good for Ted. Be like Ted.
Be like Ted. Make the shirt.
They're missing out, dude. They need to make that shirt 100%.
But I mean, yeah, you nailed it, and like I said, easy to say looking back, right? Hard to have that perspective, when you are young, because it's just, you don't have that perspective, right? But now I'm talking like, I'm some old man, but yeah, I think
only in spirit, Mark. Only in spirit.
And like you said, though, don't be. I think people want to make it too quick nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just arrive at where you want to be when you're, you don't arrive at the finish line. You know what I mean? You got to get there. And that's
speaking of this. Did you ever end up getting the Wyoming pronghorn tag you were considering?
I didn't, because I put other hunts in its place.
Speaking of this, I want to get your take. Some new news materialized here recently. Are you familiar with HR Bill 8167, the Pittman-Robertson?
Dude, just heard about it today.
What's your initial thoughts on this?
Oh man, this is in some ways okay.
Time out real quick. Pause. Can you explain briefly, cliff notes of anybody that's not familiar with Pittman-Robertson, kind of roughly what it is? And then we can get into this bill that was introduced by the sponsors out of Georgia, a Republican out of Georgia, for context.
So as I understand it, right? So fact check me, anybody that knows more about this than I do. But essentially, at its base level, the Pittman-Robertson Act is a tax on items like firearms and ammunition, a significant tax that we essentially implemented to tax ourselves. And these things, that money goes towards related things that we'd be passionate about. So that could be a new shooting range. So if you're like a recreational shooter, that might be very important to you. You got to have a place to shoot, right? If you want to shoot, it could be hunting related, could be access related, opportunity related. So very important things. Like we want to engage in these activities that essentially, and at least I know, like for you and I, Brian, like they are really a big part of who we are as a person. You have to have those resources to do that, right? So it's a tax that helps fund those things so we can engage in those activities. So I know very little about what you're saying, and you might, please fill in blanks there.
I want to just share a few things. So we put this on some Instagram earlier today, which was kind of introducing this bill that had just been materialized and surfaced recently. And I did a poll, like, are you familiar with the Pittman-Robertson Act? 47% of the responders said absolutely, while 53% said, no, I'm not aware of it. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to be better in this sphere of politics within the shooting, hunting, trapping world, because this is one of many in the year of 2022 bills that have been introduced. And I might add, introduced by a blend of both Democrats and also Republicans. It's certainly not one-sided. They are both coming down the pipe, which might surprise you based on some of the bills and the associated sponsor of what their political affiliation is. You may be very surprised, but not enough people, particularly younger people, I think understand how important this stuff is. And so there's a lot of bills. Washington State, for example, has been battling the spring bear hunting issue this past year. California's had battles. They surface all over, and it generally happens at the beginning of a session. And I oftentimes pass through and become into law, and sometimes they get killed on the floor. It just depends on the situation. But our voice, our support of this lifestyle of hunting, of fishing, of shooting is exceptionally powerful in making a difference on the outcome of these terrible bills that get introduced. And I would say there's a lot of older folks that I would guess are in the 55 up age range that are super involved, very highly involved, know the ins and outs of how all of this stuff works, how to make a difference. And then I would say there's a big portion of people that are a little younger than that have a moderate amount of understanding and interest. And then a younger group of folks that probably have virtually zero understanding or interest. The challenge with all of this is that people introducing these bills, these politicians, again, from both parties, in my opinion, don't entirely care about any of us. They're doing it for their own benefit and gain. And oftentimes, if you look at lobbying groups that are helping perpetuate these bills, oftentimes they are not in alignment with most of us listening and watching. They're not interested in hunting and trapping. There seems to be a targeted attack on predator hunting. Certainly is always like kind of the lead in to get stuff going that would be more favorable to their goals, right?
It's easier to spin with misinformation, and that misinformation targets people's emotions to elicit decisions based on those emotions, not reality or scientific fact. I guess, and I'm speaking specifically to when you hear a lot of like the large predator or
yes.
the arguments against like spring bear seasons in Washington. One of the most.
Anyways, Mark, we were getting worked up about politics.
Yeah. I mean, I was espousing my disdain for the way the arguments get made, against generally large predator,
yes.
game management, spring seasons like the Washington State one that you've got folks who are making an argument not based on any sort of scientific fact. Carrying capacity, recommendations by the DNR, right? I mean, you've got a DNR who we're paying to be experts, right? They're the people on the ground. They're the people doing the studies, and yet we're choosing not to listen to them because I guess I don't actually even understand why we wouldn't listen to them, right? It's really frustrating.
It makes absolutely no sense. And to your point, that's part of the plan, though.
It's part of the plan, but it's interesting because people who in their effort, quotation mark, to, I guess, save the resource, it's actually at an overall detriment to the resource. You're actually hurting it by not managing it, by not having hunting seasons, by not having people like hunters, which I know for some people it's difficult for them to understand, but we care about these animals immensely at a very, very, I guess like high level or core level. Like we hunt these animals, yes. We eat these animals, yes. But we care about them. But we care about them as a population, not necessarily like the individual.
Exactly, which is so spot on. My point starting all this is going to tie back into this new bill that I'm going to reference here, but
what I'm getting at is, as a group of hunters and shooters and anglers and outdoorsmen, we have to be more proactive. We have to be more educated on how these bills get from an idea to introduction to eventually like voted on in the House or the Senate, and then potentially even into law. And we also have to understand that like contacting our local representatives through email and phone is the single most impactful way to be heard. And those who have the loudest voice and are the most consistent oftentimes see these bills win. There are some great organizations that have been doing a lot of good stuff that if you just need like the easy button, I would encourage you to look into that. I don't know them personally, but the guys that created the howl.org thing have made it so easy to just like be involved, take action with very little effort. So you don't have to go digging up and find a bunch of stuff. You literally can, they'll send you an email. All you need to do is like complete the task of making your voice heard. And they are rallying the troops up in a lot of these different states. But this is a different one. So the Pittman-Robertson Wildlife Restoration Act, it was created back in 1937. To Mark's point, it was created for us to tax ourselves on things that we are all passionate about. And we're generalizing this. I'm not an expert in the act, but I would encourage you guys, if you aren't familiar with this, to go look it up, know what we're talking about and why this bill should raise some caution. So to Mark's also point, it taxes different things. So like handguns, and there's a variety of categories, which is a 10% tax on handguns, an 11% tax on things like rifle, carbines, machine guns, shotguns, fowling pieces, antique firearms, shells and cartridges, 11%, firearm parts or accessories, 11%. This is one a lot of people may not know. Archery equipment, 11%. In the between fiscal year 16 and 20, this created a gross profit of $3.59 billion generated. And it, like Mark mentioned, it gets distributed out to different states for common things we would all want to support. And again, it's been around forever, long time, since 1937. So the bill, which is HR 8167, was sponsored by Representative Andrew Clyde, who's a Republican out of Georgia. And he's making some form of an argument that it infringes upon, I believe, our Second Amendment rights. And I believe this is a political back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats based on recent gun legislation brought forth by Democrats. And this is a bit of a rebuttal. But what it doesn't seem to consider is the damage that it could do if they repealed this act on all the good that we have done since 1937 to support the stuff that we are all incredibly passionate about. And unfortunately, this bill has 53 co-sponsors. This is going to kill us. A lot of people are not going to be happy with this that are all Republican, which is crazy to me. And gosh, it goes to show that neither of these parties are really looking out for the hunter. The hunter oftentimes gets left behind on both parties.
It's tricky, man, and I look at the Pittman-Robertson Act, and you mentioned one thing, Brian, that there's and not by anybody's fault, but there's a lot of people that they're not even aware that it exists or that it's happening or the good that it does, right? There's a lot of people benefiting from it, whether you're a hunter or not, like you're going to benefit from those dollars going towards, the things that money goes towards. And when you think about, you did that poll and there's some other, or even anecdotally, like if there's a significant portion of hunters that aren't aware of it, if there's a significant portion of shooters that aren't aware of it and how it works and what it's doing, if you're not, I would say, okay, and I'm going to make a generalization here, but if you're not a hunter and shooter, then you're just not going to know about it, right? Like why why would you, and that's a blanket statement. I'm sure there's people that don't hunt and shoot and fish that are well aware of it. Right. But, like I said, a generalization there, but, yeah. And so I think there's definitely an education piece there to, for people to at least, hopefully learn about it, find out about it, and formulate their opinion on it, whether they think it's a good thing or not a good thing. We all don't have to agree on everything. Like, I'm a big fan of it personally. I'll speak for myself. Like, I'm like so proud of it. Like, I'm so proud of that and the work that it's done over the years. Like, I think that's definitely a feather in our cap as hunters and sportsmen and shooters, that we're doing, good things like that, where it becomes tricky. And this is where I'm going to be like the guy on the forum that, somebody asks a question. He's like, well, I think, and it's like, well, no, I came here, I actually want the answer. I don't care what you think. But the little that I know about it. So let me preface with the little that I know about, I guess, the why behind it. So caveat everything I'm saying here is like, it's been like saying like, well, this is creating a barrier to firearms ownership. Right. And so, and I could even ask myself, well, how would I, if they were going to introduce that today, if they were going to do that today, how would I feel about that? You know what I mean? Because like, I'm an ardent Second Amendment, supporter, right? So, which, to me, like, it's not about hunting. It's not about recreational shooting. That's not what the Second Amendment is about. And I'm fully in support of the Second Amendment. Vortex is as well, right? So like, I don't want to limit a responsible person's access to firearms or firearms ownership. Like, I don't want to limit that in every way. And I was trying to think of, like, for myself today, like, I'd have to weigh some things there. If you were going to introduce that today, I would actually have to weigh some things like, okay, this is benefiting all these things that I care about, right? But it is, yeah, it's just, it's an interesting, like, I'm glad it's in place, and I'm glad it got in place when it did. I guess I'll put it that way.
I mean, here's the thing. I think we can say this about probably any law or bill that gets introduced. Nothing's perfect. There's always going to be opportunities to improve it and make it better. But I think it's easy to see the financial impact it has had. And when this stuff is in place too, it's harder to unravel it when it's already there. Right. And there's so much benefit to be had across all of the states.
Well, and the fallout, think of the fallout. Like, I mean, the people are depending, on that money to do those things. Like, if you said, if you said, oh, well, yeah, we're going to do this, but then all the money comes from over here and it's the same thing. I guess, all right, knock yourself out. Or actually, I'd say, well, why don't we just add it to it and do more good things? Yeah. But,
there's also the Dingell-Johnson Act is a similar type act for like the fishing side of it. And, you think about the amount of money that hunters raise specifically through the purchase of license and tags every year. Like, we've always carried the bag, in my opinion, on helping fund the things that we're passionate about. And hunting is conservation. I'm absolutely in belief of that as well. And to your point, Mark, we may not love the individual animal, but we are so passionate about the species that we're hunting. And
I think I'm going to interrupt you here, but we also have like a greater understanding of actually how nature works, and we view ourselves as part of that system, not necessarily separate. And so I think that's like a perspective thing that's maybe different from a person who doesn't hunt, because that they are not, I guess, immersed in that, Anyway, sorry.
I think at the end of the day too, like, if you're not familiar with any of these acts we're talking about or the bill itself, I could not encourage you enough to go do a little research. Now, it's going to take some time to go pull it up, but go read about the Pittman-Robertson Act, go read about Dingell-Johnson, read about the bill introduced by this individual from Georgia, and whatever you believe, just participate in voicing your opinion. I think the more critical thing is, to me anyways, is getting more hunters and shooters involved in the process. We're not always going to agree on everything, and I'm okay with that. I think that's healthy. There's a lot of friends and family that I have that we don't agree on every little topic, and it's all good, man. I still love them to death. I appreciate their perspective, but we just have to like get involved, become more educated, and make our voices heard. If you are not familiar with like who your state representative is, it's super easy. Just Google, how do I find my state representative? The government webpage will pull up. You type in your zip code and it'll literally tell you like, here's your people. You can just send them a quick email. You can also call them. You generally don't get through as often with a phone call, but a lot of them have assistants and administrators and staff working for them that they can receive and kind of make note of, hey, this is how I feel about this particular bill. And oftentimes you'll get a replied email. Some of them are just, generic canned ones, but other times they're authentic replies from your representative. But that's the best way. And then also just sharing it with people that you hang out with that are also passionate about hunting and outdoors. That's how we're going to try to move the needle a little bit. And again, whatever you're supporting in for or against, it's just important to be a part of the process.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it takes time and it takes effort, right? And those are commodities in life, right?
Yeah.
But definitely well worth it. I've tried to be better about that and be a participant. I admittedly not always great about that, and things like, how, like you said, like, hey, you know what? Like, as long as I'm getting my point across and they've given me an easy button and I know it's going to the right place, like, I think like, and you covered some great ways to find out like, well, who do I even, and I think, but it's like, yeah, like you said, that can be a good way to, at least provide a level of comment on those issues for sure.
Well, it's certainly not the most enjoyable thing. It's certainly not as fun as being out in the field, scouting, hunting, you name it, but it's an important component that we just have to like make an emphasis. It sucks Googling this stuff and doing your research and reading about all these things. And whether you're, again, in agreement or disagreement, it's not the most enjoyable way to spend your time. But man, we got to make it happen. Got to make it happen.
Well, and the consequence of not is that you might not be able to go do that hunt that you like because of that.
Washington spring bear hunting, correct?
Right. Yeah. I comment on that. I comment on that several times.
Yeah.
And stuff like, stuff that you think, well, that will never change. That will never go away. Like even like you're talking about today, like the Pittman-Robertson Act, like it never crossed my mind in a million years that somehow that would try like the, that would be on the table. You know what I mean? It's like, because you just take it as, well, that's just like a fact. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. And apparently that's not the case. I learn more and more every day that apparently that's not the case.
Certainly seems to be. Mark, what is new and exciting at Vortex? What should we expect in the future?
Oh man, I mean, just stuff is always moving and shaking around here. The product development team, I mean, they've always got their heads down and, coming up with new stuff. As of recently, we revamped the rangefinder lineup. So, not too long ago, we introduced 3 new rangefinders. They're all just, upgrades, better optics. They're faster. They're all illuminated reticles now. The reticles, I like the reticles better. They're a little bit smaller than some past versions. So like on the product side, that's super cool. Some things coming down the pike, here in the, not too distant future. So, we always have something going on. We don't necessarily release all of our products like, oh, it's Jan 1, boom, hit the product launch button. So, it just, it works out really well. It gives you something to be excited about, something to talk about and look forward to.
If people want to see your entire team pick on you on a weekly basis, where are good places to find that content?
Yeah, if you'd like to comment in my defense, you can You can go to at Vortex Optics, man, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, all the socials, all the socials. Hit us up, on email. Give us a call, and I'd say on a more serious side, I mean, we've got a crack squad in the consumer sales department who are incredibly knowledgeable about, Western hunting, Eastern hunting, guns, competitive shooting, from precision rifle to multi-gun, just general firearms knowledge. I've got this gun. I'm thinking about putting this optic on it. What mounts do I need? And everything in between. We talked about, connecting with our customers, and that's one way we do it. We want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. We want to help you out. We want to have those conversations. And I would say, enjoy your hunting and shooting pursuits like to their fullest potential. And optics are a great way to do that, Brian.
I would agree, Mark. Last but not least, how do they find your podcast?
So Vortex Nation podcast. It's on all the podcast platforms. We put them on YouTube as well. I don't know if you've heard of that platform, Brian, but it's a online video distribution platform. So we record them, and it's we oftentimes have visual aids, like we'll bring in a gun or we're trying to explain something, and, picture's worth 1,000 words. So, that works really good to put them on YouTube too. And, listen and watch along if you want.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough. To an old friend, I'm glad we are going to be celebrating an anniversary tomorrow of an official partnership. And I'm glad that you responded to Casey's email back in 2013.
Absolutely.
It's been an enjoyable, fun ride. Looking forward to doing more stuff with you in the future. And I can't recommend follow along the Vortex Optics Instagram page enough. They don't do it every single day, but many times in a week, you will find yourself laughing out loud at just the dynamics within the Vortex HQ office.
No, appreciate it, Brian. And I will turn it around on you. Can't thank you guys enough for the friendship and the partnership. I mean, you guys are you're the OGs in the YouTube hunting space. Had a vision, did some very original things, pioneers, and I think, paved the way for a lot of people to, follow suit and make, hunting content and outdoor content on YouTube what it is today. So it's really cool, man. And you guys are always doing fun stuff on social, and you get what it's for, and that's awesome to see. So
I appreciate it, brother. That is going to wrap up another edition of the Hushlife podcast. If you are not already, check us out on Instagrams at GetHushin, or maybe go visit our website, www.gethushin.com. We're always giving away new, exciting stuff. And oh, by the way, right now will be the final week to win a pretty sick hunting trip with us at R&K Hunting Company right here in Utah. It is a $20,000 prize package. All you got to do is buy anything on our website. $1 spent, get you one automatic entry to win. We're going to be picking this winner here coming up by July 12th or 15th. And somebody's hunting with us this October for mule deer, one of Mark's favorite species. So make sure you get your name in the hat. Appreciate you guys following along, watching, listening. We will see you on the next one.